Are you intrigued by those who make the right choices to achieve success? Curious about what it is they know that makes them successful? What have they learned from their careers and life journeys? In his interviews with some of London's most authentic leaders, David C.M. Carter reveals secrets of success to inspire and motivate you to pursue your dreams. Insights from people of all backgrounds will empower you to get ahead. Learn from those who have challenged their status quo and understand what it takes to overcome failures and setbacks. Change your mindset and begin your journey with this episode of Secrets of Success.
My father was a university lecturer, and he made it entirely clear that you were committed to lifelong learning.
And I remember even when I was as little as 4 or 5 year old, learning poetry and speaking about changing things and long-term vision.
I was born into a business family. My dad was a car dealer owned car retail outlets, crash repair shops, petrol stations and service stations. So I grew up in a kind of small business environment, if you like.
Yeah, I went to university in Richmond, Virginia, and then I did my graduate degree in Honolulu, Hawaii.
In Honolulu, right.
When I was about 12, we moved from the United States to Ireland, and that was quite a culture shock.
You grew up in Scotland, if I remember.
Edinburgh.
Edinburgh.
That's exactly right. But I went to Keele University, which in those days had an extra year, a foundation year, where you learnt a bit of everything, at the end of which you could choose what subjects you did, and you had to do 5 of them. And at the end of that...
Did you know you always wanted to be a lawyer?
No. I wound up being a lawyer because I ran into the professor of law in the pub one evening during that first year, who said, "How are you going to choose what you want to do for the rest of your time at university?" And I said, "I don't know." I changed my mind like I changed my socks. And he said, "Well, why don't you come to some first year lectures and see what they're like? You're welcome to come to mine." And the rest is history.
My father, having worked so many long hours in the mills up in Yorkshire, in Bradford, the bustling capital of textile at the time, whatever time he had, he was always say to me, "I'm doing this hard work, A, to show you that grafting and work ethic is very important in life, and there's no substitute for that, but B, to show you that I'm putting all this effort in to give you a better life, to give you ease and convenience." And on the other hand, my mum would be there to show us why is it important to empathise with people who don't have what you have, or people who are in need of your help, for you to make a difference in their life. Every evening, despite going to school, we used to sit there like Roman poets and joust through poetry, and he would say, "Well, the challenge is if I end with a poem and the letter I end with, if you can start with a poem and that letter, we'll carry on, and if you can't, then obviously you failed." And it was amazing, and I ended up learning thousands of poems in the
Thousands?
Thousands, yeah. In Arabic, Urdu and Persian. I went on to memorize the Holy Quran at the age of 11, and Quran is in Arabic, and it's a voluminous, huge text. I don't speak Arabic. At the time, I didn't speak Arabic. I didn't understand Arabic, but I did it through rota fashion and memorized the entire book, which helped me throughout my life in terms of memorizing information, retaining information.
Went to school, loved school, very passionate about life from a young age. Studied economics at university, because to be honest, I didn't much enjoy studying economics, but it was one of those things that turned out to be useful in the end. I thought I wanted to understand how the economy works and how the business world works, and what makes the world go round. And I left and I joined Bain & Company and started out in strategy consulting, which was a brilliant first job. I should say I'd spent a lot of time in the school holidays working, so I've always worked very hard. So because of my dad's business, I'd been a petrol pump attendant, and in the days before it was all self-service, and I'd worked in crash repair shop receptions and so on. So I'd clocked up probably 2 years of work experience before going to business.
Did your siblings to work in the business too, or just you?
Well, I was just very keen, so I wanted to earn money and I wanted to learn and do stuff, so every minute that I could, I worked. I also travelled as a I did a gap year before university, and I went backpacking all around Asia and so on. Earned the money first and then went travelling. Then joined Bain & Company in strategy consulting, which was a brilliant place to start. I think I was a bit of a rebel. I think funnily enough, they're a big client of ours now. But at the time, I think I was probably more trouble than I was worth. But I learnt a lot in a short space of time. It was a great grounding in terms of learning about being in teams, and very professional, very high standards. And then I went and joined my dad, and at a very young age, for various circumstantial reasons, ended up as CEO of a car business in the southeast of England. And I was unusual for a whole bunch of reasons, the most obvious of which was that I was a woman, but other reasons too. I was very focused on culture and people, and not interested in cars. I'm still not interested in cars. But I figured out, I made a lot of mistakes, but I figured out early on that the way I could be effective was by creating a great culture and making a place that people wanted to be.
When I was about 27 years old, and I was working in New York, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life next. And I saw an ad that McKinsey was advertising for positions, and I didn't know actually what they were. I hadn't gone to a top university, I hadn't gone to business school. I had done a whole range of different things in Asia and different places. And I remember looking at that advertisement, kind of asking someone what this place was. They were opening an office in Southeast Asia where I had some experience. And I just went along for an interview, not really knowing what it was. And it was a day-long interview where they had 8 interviews. Every 2 interviews, they asked about half the people to leave. And somehow at the end, I think there was about 100 people who started, almost all who knew each other from different business schools, and I was one of 2 people at the end. I didn't know enough about the mystique of the place. I didn't actually know how hard it was to get a job there at the time. I, again, was a bit naive. I think that was maybe helpful. I wasn't as nervous as maybe I would have been otherwise. I think there was a lot of problem-solving questions, which I sort of enjoyed at the time, which I did well at. But I think broadly, I kind of went in just not really being scared of it, not really nervous. It wasn't, I think many of the people there, it was their life dream to work at McKinsey. It had never been my dream before. I didn't really know what this place was. And I think in some ways that gave me a bit of an edge.
Ignorance was bliss.
Yeah.
I was also kind of quite badly bullied at school as well. So I think, although there's quite negative things, those are really
in America or in Ireland?
Well, in Ireland mainly, yeah. So those were quite pivotal and events in my life and shaped quite a bit of how I approached my life.
And when you moved to Ireland, you were what, 12 years old?
Yeah, about 12, yeah.
And why were you bullied?
Well, actually, I think it was because of my American accent. This is 1981. And I don't think America, I don't even remember very much what was going on politically at the time. I was quite young, I wasn't really interested. People didn't like Americans. And I remember coming through London on our way to Ireland, and we spent a few weeks travelling across the UK with my stepfather, who's English. And we couldn't get service in shops and things. It was quite shocking. There was a real strong anti-Americanism in London, and then when I went to boarding school in Ireland, there was quite a bit of it there too.
And did it go on throughout your entire time at the school?
Yes.
And what kind of impact has that had on your life? And
yeah, I think it really affects your self-esteem. And if you're surrounded by a lot of hatred, it's very easy to take it on yourself and actually believe what other people are saying about you and believe about you.
And how has that shaped you?
It made me very fearful. It obviously affected my self-esteem. It's like a stranglehold, actually. Really kind of is very hard to break free from. And I mean, that's something that I've obviously been on a journey of recovering from. So I'm no longer in that place.
My motto is get lucky and say yes.
Get lucky and say yes. Explain.
The reason is that you do get lucky in life, but you can also put yourself in a position
To be
more lucky than you would be. That might be by figuring out what you would like to do next, or what skills you need, or who in your network might be interesting or useful to you. So an example of that was I was working in California, thinking about Mexico down the road, thinking they hadn't done a big electricity reform and maybe they like to think about that. I got lucky and met somebody at a conference who was opening an operation in Mexico. It turned out that his man in Mexico was a friend of the energy minister.
Right.
Was that luck or what? But actually, I was thinking ahead. Then, of course, saying yes, well, that involves you getting out of your comfort zone quite a bit.
After 2 years of studying in Bury, moving to Karachi, again on your own.
Again on my own.
And that must have been very difficult for you.
There was a lot of poor kids there in that institution. People who only had one piece of cloth, and they would tie all of their entire belongings in that cloth and carry on their backs. And those kids became my friends. And I was just amazed by the simplicity of their life, and still had a huge smile on their faces. So that shaped my life a lot. And just sitting with those people, and they would have lentils in food. And I was struggling to find a piece of lentil in that soup because there was more water in that soup than lentils. I mean, there's people from poor backgrounds. So fending for myself, taking on responsibility, holding myself to account, when I've taken a step, it was the greatest life experience I've ever had.
And Leaders Quest, I started actually whilst I was still running the previous company. I was always a multitasker, so it was a weekend thing and an evening thing that pretty quickly it became apparent really had a lot of life in it. And so then I figured out how was I going to leave graciously and gracefully and spend Leaders Quest, make that my full-time job.
So if I'd never heard of Leaders Quest,
what do we do?
What do you do?
But really our work's about leadership, and it's about engaging people in positions of leadership and influence and inspiring them in different ways in terms of how do they make a difference in the world. So our work's all about helping people to step up in different ways and in bigger ways.
There was a project that came open that was looking at how businesses could help education in London. My family are teachers, but I had no educational experience. And I got on this project. And the project was, the background was Prince Charles basically hosted a number of business leaders at his palace. And he asked the business leaders, what's one of your biggest constraints? And many of them said, look, the talent coming out of London schools isn't what we need it to be. So the head of McKinsey was there, Ian Davis, and he said, can you guys look at it? So the problem is that lots of children in England at that point and today were getting a very, very poor education, an education that didn't enable them to make the most out of their lives, that I felt failed them completely, that in many ways, if we were going to be really melodramatic, I felt almost was enslaving them. There was no question that lots of children were leaving schools just failed by the system. In my mind, failed by a lot of the people who were responsible for their education, which isn't to say, obviously, there wasn't great teaching in great schools, but there were a lot of children really being failed.
That was kind of a wake-up call for you that something needed to be done about it, and you could lead the change.
Yeah. And our basic philosophy, our belief at Teach First, is the vision that no child's educational success should be limited by their background. So it doesn't matter where you come from, you should be able to succeed education at the same level. You know, there should be as many poor kids as wealthy kids going to the top universities, going to the top jobs. And the education system should ensure that, you know, GCSE results, literacy, numeracy, it doesn't matter whether you're from a low-income or high-income background.
So tell us the story about how you went from being a secretary to running the Hammersmith and Fulham Food Bank.
I did the secretarial work. I then did some parliamentary monitoring, which was very interesting. Read Hansard's a lot. Did some time at the House of Commons, looking at going to debates and things like that. And then had a wonderful job for a marketing company, which I really enjoyed. And then I did the traditional thing and got married, had kids. And so I was at home for quite a long time with the children. I'd say I was at home with them till about 5 years ago, I suppose, really. When my daughter was about 9, I had already started working 1 day a week, very flexible. And then I was very... food is something that I love. I love food. I could talk about food. I love eating out, and I love cooking. And I was one of those people who, whenever I heard anybody was sick, and I would bring a meal around. And I really enjoyed doing that. And then I was aware of people being hungry. I mean, we know that the third world has terrible problems with hunger, always really affecting, but it's also so far away, it's very hard to kind of identify with it. And then I became aware, just looking around me, that there are hungry people. I mean, London is so mixed, isn't it? You don't have to travel far from your little enclaves of privilege to see areas where there is deprivation.
It's hard, I think, for some people to imagine how, the 200,000 population of Hammersmith and Fulham in the first city in a first world country could need a food bank. How many people, or what percentage of the population of Hammersmith and Fulham actually are your customers?
I think it's about 2% of the population of Hammersmith and Fulham have accessed the food bank at some point in the last 4 years since we opened it, which I think is quite significant when you think, as you say, that we're a first world country, an incredibly wealthy city.
What was the epiphany that made you think, I have to do something about this?
Yeah, well, a friend and I, and her husband, she co-pastors a church with her husband, and we were looking at food banks, and we were looking at the American models. Couldn't find anything, doing a lot of Google searches and things like that. Didn't find any British models, and she was too busy to do anything, but said, I really think it'd be great to start a food bank. And the American models are very different. They're very big. Me being who I was and still having quite a lot of fear at that point, I didn't think that I could do that here. I didn't know how it would work here. And then I heard about the Trussell Trust food bank model. And I went to a meeting to hear more about that. Subsequently went up to Salisbury with a group of people. And I thought, I could do that. Well, I could get involved and do this, I never really thought at that point that I would end up
being the leader.
Yeah, that never really occurred to me. But then some people came up to me and said, actually, we believe there should be a food bank in Hammersmith and Fulham. And
we believe you should
we
run
believe
it.
you could do it. Why don't you do it? I'm like, oh. So that's the short version of how it happened.
How many years has there been a Lord Mayor?
825 years.
800, I was right, 825 years. And I think you're only the second woman in 825 years.
Yes, yes, nothing to be proud of there. It's taken a while even to get from the first to the second. She was 30 years ago now.
We're sitting here looking at the City of London, and you're the Lord Mayor.
Mm.
The city would have, I think, over the last 10 years, have a big question mark over its integrity and its honesty.
Mm.
And so one of the questions I was going to ask you is, how does that brand or reputation, which the city is, I think, well earned, how have you found that to deal with when your own values are so strong about honesty and integrity, where you're now the figurehead for the very people who've not been honest or had integrity?
It's an uncomfortable position to be in. Obviously, you can't defend the indefensible. And it just goes to show what everybody says, is you can lose your reputation in a nanosecond, and it takes a generation to build it back. Actually, I think there's a lot of work going on in the city on that. There was a big move towards Islamic finance. It was only one of the things. But there were new financing techniques coming in for project finance. The challenge is for the leaders particularly to demonstrate that they have changed the culture at the big middle of their organisations.
Finance is the funding part of any project that you do, whether you're acquiring an asset, whether you are purchasing or combining assets or merging with a company. It's Islam, or the religion of Islam allows you or requests from you that you can't do certain things, or you have to do certain things in a certain manner. So the prohibited elements, the can't do's, there's no interest allowed. And an interest which we look at in terms of the interest that we get on in our banks, the interest we charge on loans, that's not allowed, because the simple reason for that is in the perspective of Islam, money is not seen as a commodity that you can benefit from. It's not like something else that you can sell and make money on. It's seen as a medium of exchange. It's equity finance, equity funding, and both parties to the investment or to the partnership are encouraged to share in risk and return. And when we say both parties, they don't have to necessarily be capital providers. One party can provide the capital, and the other can provide their skill, entrepreneurship, the idea, and then agree between themselves the percentage of their return. The other side of Islamic finance is, where can you invest? Which industries can you invest into? You can't invest into pornography, into arms industry, into tobacco, and so those harmful industries. So that's the other element in terms of the assets and the investments.
It doesn't go well.
Well, whatever 70-30, we follow the same principle.
But I haven't got any money, I've just got the great idea.
But you would lose, in that case, you would lose whatever you've put in, so the time and effort. So it's not.
Oh, so my time and effort is still
classed as
an asset.
Yeah.
So what have you learned about love?
It's partly about love of others.
Mm-hmm.
It's also, I think, and this is often a difficult part of the journey in life, it's about being able to love yourself. So there's something about self-acceptance that comes into that I also think, by the way, is a big part of leadership. You know, if if you can't find it in your own being to trust yourself, to love yourself, to have compassion for yourself, I don't mean in a sort of adulatory way, but actually to see the best of who you are and can be, then it's very hard to show up and really make a difference.
You know, we need it. I think it's, you know, we can't live in isolation. We need to be, whatever kind of love it is, whether it's a love of a partner, you know, a physical partner, or whether it's friends and family. I think the world can be a very lonely place, and I think it's really sad that there are people who live in isolation and don't know and don't experience love. And I think you know, our hearts need to be soft.
I mean, for me, it's kind of the whole story. I think it's what life's all about. I think it's what the universe is made of. I think we often, in all of our complexity, we can miss the point. But I think life is about love. And, you know, by that I mean the sense that we are all connected. We're all part, I think, of the same whole. In a deep way, we're questing for unity. We want relationship. We want without relationship with one another, we don't have anything. I mean, I think one is not really alive if you don't have relationship. And so, for me, love is about that drive to being part of a whole.
Everything I'm doing, and every day I'm busy doing these things, am I actually successful internally? Am I actually happy internally? Am I actually at peace within myself? Some people go to yoga, some people meditate to achieve that, because you can have the unlimited amount of money in the world, and you'll find instances of people out there who are stressed, frustrated in life. So to see success equating to money or to a particular position isn't true for me.
If you're only caught in what you can measure, particularly in what you can measure financially, it's very, very difficult to take some of the risks around authenticity. I mean, some of the things that, frankly, you can't easily measure. And so there's something about trusting to what you know. I mean, intuition, really, emotional intelligence, what I'd call, I don't often say it in a working environment, but it's spiritual intelligence also.
So before Teach first came along, I know you're Jewish, aren't you? In the Jewish faith, you have this concept of tikkun olam, which is healing the world or repairing the world, which is making a difference. Had that been part of your mindset and your heart set, you know, when you were at school, when you were in your research period of time, were you looking for the thing that you could latch onto, that you would resonate with, that could be your thing to make the world a better place?
Yes.
And then Teach First came along.
I think so, yeah. I mean, I think I never thought I wanted to start a new charity or that had to be it. But definitely a deep-held belief I have is the purpose of life is to make leave the world better than when you found it, and you could do that many different ways, being great parents, being in lots of different roles. But to me, I always wanted to make sure that that was as much as possible a central part of my life. And to me, this felt like a wonderful gift, this opportunity to start something and to lead something that would enable that to be a real central part of my life, where I felt really confident if this worked, it would leave lots of children's lives, lots of people's lives much better off.
I like to go to sleep at night having forgiven everybody and everyone, and not have a grudge or have any kind of, any feeling in my heart. I want to feel at peace. If this was my last night and I'm going to sleep and I'm never going to wake up, I want to feel at ease. So I don't hold anything against anyone. Those are the two things I go through every day, every night before I go to sleep.
Here we are living in this very globalized environment. This glass was made goodness knows where. This water's been round the planet many times over hundreds of thousands of years. We are all connected, and yet we don't necessarily appreciate that.
A difference should be enjoyed and celebrated and not be a cause for division. There's a difference. There is a marked difference between the word difference and division. You are different from me. I'm different from you. But you've got great values and you've got great achievements and beautiful personality, and I have different personality, and that is the beauty of this. If every fruit tasted like oranges, it wouldn't be good. Everything has its own unique taste, its own unique output, and that's what makes the world such a beautiful place. If only people realised that and appreciated that, and going back to what I said earlier, is giving as opposed to taking, because all of these conflicts, whether it's what's happening in Crimea or other parts of the world, what's happening in Africa, what's happening in the Islamic world, it's all about my territory, it's all about my clan, my tribe, it's about my position, and it's not about others. And that's the problem.
The line I famously use in this role, which is our success is your success. As I go around the world, it's less about, bring investment to London and please receive our exports and give us contracts. It's more about, bilateral trade and investment, and how do we grow the cake together.
But think of all that waste, right? Those kids who had just the pure misfortune, pure unluck, life of the lottery, they went to these schools at a bad point in history. Their whole lives, for the most part, they're going to have very few opportunities, very few job opportunities, very low chance of actually making the most out of their lives, of living the life that they should be living, which is not just a huge waste for them personally and a huge personal tragedy, but it's a national tragedy, because these are people who can make Britain even a better country, a better place to live for everyone. I can't think of anything more powerful. It's like, what happens to a country when slavery is abolished, or when more and more people have the opportunity to live the life that they're capable of. I think it's something that can transform a country.
What's your life's purpose?
To help others, to share what I've achieved with others, and to make a difference by fulfilling other people's needs. One of the things we see with a lot of our teachers is actually helping kids makes a lot of people happy, and a lot happier than material, a lot of material things that lots of studies, scientific research has shown doesn't really make people happy.
So you're not including everybody, then what's the point?
So that inclusiveness sounds like it's being present all the time with everyone that you encounter, but also making sure that you encounter as many as possible of the stakeholders in everything that you're involved with, and not flying in, shaking hands with the senior vice president and forgetting the 12 people who've made that meeting possible.
Exactly right.
The thought that people going hungry should be on the front page of the newspapers every single day. There's so many wonderful charities out there doing wonderful things, but then there are people going hungry, and children are going to school hungry and coming home and they're not having anything to eat for dinner. That's just awful. My passion is so strong for what I do. I care so much about what I do that I'm unstoppable now. Nothing. I don't think anything could scare me now if it was for the benefit of the Hammersmith Fulham Food Bank. I believe so much of what I do that it's actually bigger than me.
It's not about me, it's about we. And we can accomplish a lot more together than we can alone.
I think actually resilience, when you look at people who really have succeeded in any field, that is a huge difference.
Discovering what you're passionate about, finding a way to bring that into the working environment.
Am I helping to fulfill the needs of other people? Is very important to me.
You need to believe in yourself, because if you don't believe in yourself, no one else will believe in you.
Opportunity, I think, is all around us.
Giving up too quickly is a mistake a lot of people make.
Go for it, live life, run for it.
Find your calling, find your purpose, and follow it. And realize you have a lot more options in your life than you might think. I think we're very fortunate to live in a society and a time in history where we have more options than at any point in history in almost any society in the world. If you're watching this and you are one of the few people in the history of the world who has the opportunity to follow your dream and actually do something that fits with what you see as your purpose. So don't give up that opportunity.
Oh eagle, don't fear the stormy wind blowing from the opposite direction. This is blowing to make you fly even higher.